Where two rivers meet on the open prairie of southwestern Minnesota, the land keeps a memory that is both sacred and sorrowful. These bluffs and grasslands are the homeland of the Dakota people, and they witnessed one of the most painful chapters in American history. To walk here in the winter stillness is to stand on ground that is holy, and to remember, welcome to Upper Sioux Agency State Park. We are in southwestern Minnesota, just outside the town of Granite Falls, where the Yellow Medicine River flows down to join the broad Minnesota River. The park spreads across some 1,500 acres of restored prairie, wooded bluff, and river bottom. It is a quiet place today, but its name carries a heavy and important story. At the heart of the park, the Yellow Medicine River empties into the Minnesota River. The Dakota knew this valley intimately. Its name, Pezahutazizi, the place where they dig for yellow medicine, comes from a healing root that grows along these banks. For countless generations, this fertile meeting of waters gave food, shelter, and medicine to the people who lived here. This is Dakota land. Long before any survey line or treaty, the river valley was home to the Dakota, part of the Osti-Sakowin, the 7 council fires of the people often called the Sioux. Here they hunted the prairie, planted the river bottoms, and honored the land as a living relative. This was never wilderness to them, but home. The people of this upper stretch of the Minnesota River were the Sisseton and the Wahpeton, 2 of the Dakota bands. Because their villages lay farther up the river, the newcomers came to call them the Upper Sioux, and the place where their affairs would be managed the Upper Sioux Agency. Their lives were bound to the seasons of this valley, to the buffalo, the corn, and the wild rice. In 1854, the United States government built an agency here on the bluff above the rivers. Its purpose was to administer the treaties by which the Dakota had given up nearly all of their vast homeland, in exchange for a narrow reservation along the river and yearly payments of money and food, called annuities. Warehouses, offices, and homes rose on the prairie, and the fate of the Dakota was now tied to promises made far away in Washington. But the promises were not kept. The land had been bought for a fraction of its worth, and much of the money owed to the Dakota flowed instead to traders who claimed old debts. The payments came late, or came short, or did not come at all. Year by year, the people were pressed onto less land, while the help they had been guaranteed slipped further out of reach. By the summer of 1862, the annuity payment was badly overdue. Crops had failed, game was scarce, and families were starving while food sat locked inside the agency warehouses, held back until the money arrived. When the Dakota pleaded for the stores to be opened, they were refused. Hunger and broken faith had brought the valley to the edge. In August of 1862, that desperation broke into war. The U.S.-Dakota War swept the Minnesota River Valley in a brief and terrible conflict that cost the lives of settlers and Dakota alike. Within weeks, the fighting was over, but its consequences would fall most heavily and most lastingly upon the Dakota people. The aftermath was a tragedy that has never been forgotten. Hundreds of Dakota men were tried in haste and condemned. President Lincoln reviewed the cases and spared most, but on the day after Christmas in 1862, 38 Dakota men were hanged together at Mankato. It remains the largest mass execution in the history of the United States. What followed was exile. The reservations along the river were abolished, and the Dakota were driven from their Minnesota homeland. Through a bitter winter, many were held in a camp below Fort Snelling, where cold and sickness took a heavy toll, and in the spring, the survivors were sent far away to a barren reservation on the Missouri. The valley of their ancestors was emptied of its people. And yet the land itself endures, older than any sorrow. Along the Minnesota River here, ancient granite pushes up through the prairie soil, stone that is billions of years old and among the oldest exposed rock anywhere on Earth. The nearby town of Granite Falls takes its name from these outcrops. They have stood over this valley since almost the beginning of the world. Today, the park protects a healing landscape of restored native prairie, oak woodland, and quiet river bottom. Deer move through the trees, hawks circle above the bluffs, and in the warm months, wildflowers and tall grasses return to the slopes. It is a peaceful place, and one that invites reflection on all that happened here. In recent years, a measure of justice has come to this ground. In 2023, the state of Minnesota agreed to return the land of the park to the Upper Sioux community, the Pesihutazizioid, the descendants of the very people who were exiled from it. Sacred land where Dakota ancestors once starved is being restored to their care, more than a century and a half later. In winter, the valley falls silent. Snow softens the prairie, the rivers slow beneath the ice, and the bare trees stand still against a pale sky. It is a stillness that feels like remembrance. To visit here is to honor a homeland, to mourn a great wrong, and to hold with respect a history that is both sacred and sorrowful. A sacred confluence, a homeland lost and grieved, and land at last returning to its people. Thank you for watching. Follow for more interesting people, places, and things we cover on the channel.